April 6th, in history. In 46 BC, Julius Caesar pursued his enemies to North Africa. The last great Pompeian army gathered near Thapsus, determined to restore the old republic. But Caesar's legions broke the Pompeian lines in a swift, overwhelming assault. Metellus Scipio's army collapsed. Cato the Younger, refusing capture, took his own life that night. Thapsus made Caesar undisputed master of Rome's fate. The Republic's defenders were shattered, opening the path to one-man rule and forever reshaping Western civilization. In 1453, Sultan Mehmed II marched his vast Ottoman army to the walls of Constantinople, the great capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city that had stood for over 1,000 years. On April 6th, Mehmed unleashed monstrous bronze cannons, the largest ever built, shattering Constantinople's ancient walls with thunderous bombardment, shaking the city to its foundations. After 53 days, the city fell. The Byzantine Empire ended forever, reshaping trade, religion, and power across Europe and Asia, a moment historians mark as the close of the Middle Ages. In 1483, the hilltop city of Urbino, Italy, was a jewel of Renaissance culture. Here, in a duchy celebrated for art and learning, a painter's son named Raffaello Sanzio was born. Young Raphael learned painting from his father Giovanni, then trained under master Perugino. By his 20s, he painted the School of Athens and the Sistine Madonna, defining masterworks of the High Renaissance. Raphael died at just 37, yet his legacy endures across 5 centuries. His harmonious compositions and luminous figures set the standard for Western painting and inspired generations of artists worldwide. In 1652, the Dutch East India Company ruled global trade. Ships needed a waypoint on the long voyage between Europe and Asia, and the Cape of Good Hope was chosen. On April 6th, Jan van Riebeeck landed with VOC settlers and raised the Dutch flag, building a fort and garden to supply passing ships with fresh provisions. That small outpost grew into Cape Town. It marked the beginning of centuries of European colonization in southern Africa, shaping a nation still reckoning with that legacy today. In 1814, Napoleon Bonaparte's empire was crumbling. Coalition armies had seized Paris, and his own marshals refused to march on. On April 6th, Napoleon signed his abdication at Fontainebleau. He was granted the island of Elba, emperor of almost nothing. Napoleon returned within a year for the 100 Days. His abdication reshaped Europe's borders and launched the modern age of nationalism. In 1862, the Civil War raged across Tennessee. Union forces under Grant camped at Pittsburgh Landing, believing Confederate armies were far away and unprepared to strike. On April 6th, Confederate General Johnston unleashed 45,000 troops in a thunderous surprise assault, overwhelming Union lines and driving soldiers in chaos toward the river. 2 days and 23,000 casualties later, Shiloh shattered America's hope for a short war, foreshadowing years of brutal industrial-scale conflict still to come. In 1896, Athens prepared to revive a tradition dormant for 15 centuries. Before 80,000 spectators, King George I of Greece opened the Panathenaic Stadium gates. American James Connolly launched through the air in the triple jump, landing to claim gold, the first modern Olympic champion in 1,500 years. The Athens Games ignited a global movement. Every 4 years since, nations gather in peace and competition, a tradition now touching billions worldwide. In 1917, Europe was locked in devastating war. America had stayed neutral for 3 years as the Western Front consumed millions of lives. On April 6, President Wilson signed the declaration of war against Germany, ending American neutrality and committing troops to the Allied cause. Fresh American troops and resources broke the Western Front stalemate. The war ended in 1918, reshaping the global order for a century. In 1930, India simmered under British rule. A 60-year-old man in a white loincloth set out on foot toward the sea, ready to break an empire's law. On April 6th, Gandhi knelt at Dandi beach and lifted a small lump of salt from the shore, a simple act that openly defied Britain's salt monopoly and tax. The act ignited mass civil disobedience across India. Millions defied British law, accelerating the path to independence, proving that peaceful resistance could shake an empire. In 1941, Nazi Germany had already conquered most of Europe. Yugoslavia and Greece stood as the last independent nations in the Balkans, squarely in Hitler's path. On April 6th, German bombers struck Belgrade without warning. Armored divisions crossed borders from all sides, overwhelming defenders within days. Both nations fell within weeks, enduring brutal occupation for years. The resistance movements born here became legends of defiance against fascism. In 1965, the space race was transforming daily life. The Atlantic Ocean still separated continents by days of delay, until one small satellite changed everything. NASA launched Intelsat I Early Bird into geostationary orbit 35,000 kilometers above the Atlantic. It could carry 240 phone calls or a live TV signal between continents simultaneously. Early Bird shrank the world overnight. Live transatlantic television became reality, and the era of global instant communication had begun. Every modern satellite owes its existence to this moment. In 1992, Bosnia-Herzegovina declared independence. Sarajevo, a city of mixed cultures nestled in mountain valleys, stood at the center of a fracturing Yugoslavia. On April 6, Bosnian Serb forces encircled the city. Snipers took positions in the hills. The longest siege of a capital in modern warfare had begun. The siege lasted 1,425 days. Nearly 14,000 lives were lost. Sarajevo became a symbol of civilian suffering and the urgent need for international intervention. In 1994, Rwanda was a nation on edge. Decades of ethnic tension between Hutu and Tutsi communities had left the country deeply fractured and volatile. On April 6, President Habyarimana's plane was shot down over Kigali. Within hours, Hutu extremists activated pre-planned death lists, beginning a systematic slaughter of Tutsi civilians. Over 100 days, up to 800,000 people were killed. The genocide reshaped Rwanda, exposed international failure, and became a defining warning about the cost of silence.